The stack of profiles hit the desk without warning, skidding to a stop inches from my hands while Miles kept his eyes on the window like the city needed his attention more than I did. Support this 24-year-old hire. The words landed clean, practiced, already rehearsed. The office felt smaller after that. He finally turned. Not angry. Not rushed calm in the way people get when they think they're being reasonable. We're cutting your salary to protect the junior staff. Temporary. Necessary. A pause. Timed. Ethan is non-negotiable. He's tied to a shareholder deal. The folder beneath the profiles was thicker. A fresh NDA. I flipped it open and felt my stomach tighten. $1 million in penalties if I disclosed anything internal. The paper smelled new, like it had been waiting for me. I traced the salary line with my finger. Lower, cleanly reduced. No discussion. And my title adjusted. He smiled the way people do when they think they're offering mercy. You'll still be here. You'll still matter. Another page. Another adjustment. Authority stripped. Reporting line changed. My name, though still printed where it had always been. Compliance owner, final approver. My name is Amelia Rowe. I am 42 years old. The thought came fast and sharp. Not pride. Not panic, just the sudden awareness that I had spent enough years in rooms like this to know when something was wrong, even if no one raised their voice. I looked back up. You want me to train my replacement? A nod. Not defensive. Almost pleased. Exactly. He leaned back, hands open, inviting me to see it his way. Saving jobs, keeping investors calm, doing what had to be done. I felt the familiar pull of guilt settle in. The reflex that had kept me useful for years. I signed nothing. Not yet. In the final pages, my authority was gone, but the responsibility stayed, locked in place like a cuff around my wrist. If something broke, it would still break in my name. For the record, this story is a work created by the writing team at Her Fear. I closed the folder and slid it back across the desk. Miles watched me closely now, the smile thinning, measuring how much pressure he'd need next. If this was about saving everyone else, why did it feel like I was the only one being tied down when I stood? My hands were steady, but something inside me had shifted. Not anger, not fear, awareness. And once you see the cuffs, you can't unsee them. Ethan's desk sat where mine used to be. Not literally, but close enough that I felt it in my shoulders when I stopped beside him. 3 monitors, all live, all moving, code rolling on one, dashboards refreshing on another. A third mirrored the internal reporting system I had built and maintained for years. He didn't look up right away. Fingers kept moving. Fast, confident, too confident for someone who was supposed to be ramping up. You can take the chair, he said. Eyes still on the screen? If you want. I stayed standing. He finally glanced over, caught my expression, and cleared his throat. Miles wants me live on the systems by end of week. No apology. No gratitude. Just pressure. Passed down intact. Hours later, the floor was empty. The building hummed the way it always did after dark, like it was holding its breath. I was heading out when a glow leaked from the server room. Ethan stood inside, jacket tossed on a chair, hands braced on the rack. His face was pale. The screens reflected in his glasses made his eyes look fractured. You shouldn't be in here alone, I said. He laughed once. Sharp. That's the point. The words spilled fast after that. Not a confession. More like a crack. Miles knows something about my family. His voice dropped. If I don't do what he says, he'll destroy them. I watched his hands. They were shaking now. What is he making you do? I asked. Ethan swallowed. Things that look clean. Things that pass. A beat. Things that don't belong to me. The room felt tighter. The monitors behind him flickered. Access logs scrolling faster than they should have. If the person placed above me was already trapped, who exactly was pulling his strings? Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Ethan stiffened, straightened, slipped the mask back on. Tomorrow, he said quietly, already turning away. He's going to ask you to approve something. The lights dimmed automatically as I stepped back out. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. An internal notification. Flagged urgent, A document request, my name pre-filled in the approval field. Waiting. The approval alert sat on my screen with my name stamped across it. Dated and cleared at the exact hour I had been standing beside my mother's casket. I didn't breathe until the file finished loading. The report opened clean, formatted the way I liked it. My digital credentials glowed in the corner. Final approver. No flags, no comments. Just my name. Steady and false. I scrolled. The timestamp burned. Midday. The same hour my phone had been off. Tucked into my coat pocket while relatives murmured behind me. I hadn't been near a computer. I hadn't even been near the city. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then pulled back. Touching it felt like agreeing to something. The cursor blinked. Waiting. Footsteps stopped behind me. Not rushed. Careful. I was hoping you'd see that before you asked about it. Ethan said. His voice stayed low, like the walls might listen. I turned. He looked worse than the night before. Eyes red, jaw tight. He didn't sit. Say it, I told him. He exhaled through his nose. I didn't steal anything. I didn't break your password. His hands opened. Empty. I used a model. It learns behavior patterns, timing, click cadence. My stomach dropped. You replicated me. I replicated the system's expectation of you. His gaze flicked to the screen. Miles said it was temporary, that it would protect everyone. Protect who? I asked, already knowing the answer. He didn't respond right away. His shoulders sagged. He gave me a choice. The words pressed in from every direction. The approvals, the funeral, the way the report fit perfectly into the quarter. If they could do this without me ever touching a keyboard, what would stop them from deciding I had done something worse? Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice further. There are more different dates, different files. Pause. He wants you clean when it breaks. I closed the report and locked my screen. The office felt too quiet, like it was waiting for a verdict. Show me everything, I said. He nodded once. Relief and fear crossing his face in equal measure. As he pulled up the access logs, my inbox refreshed on its own. A new meeting request appeared at the top. Mandatory, immediate, from Miles. Miles didn't invite me in. He waved from his desk, palm down. The universal signal for stay where you are. Close the door, he said without looking up. I did. The click sounded louder than it should have. He stood, straightened his jacket, and smiled like we were allies. I wanted to check in. You've had a lot thrown at you. I waited. You're holding the company together. He continued, pacing just enough to feel thoughtful. That's not a burden I give lightly. My hands curled at my sides. You took my authority and kept your influence. He stopped in front of me. Close. That's trust. He let the word sit, then leaned back. If this quarter fails, 500 people lose their jobs. Not executives, not shareholders, families. His eyes searched my face. Measuring. You care about that. It wasn't a question. It was a claim. I pictured the approvals waiting in my queue. The ones with my name already stamped on them. The ones Ethan said were clean enough to pass and dirty enough to ruin me. Miles softened his voice. I know this isn't comfortable, but comfort isn't leadership. He gestured toward the window, the city below moving on without us. Sometimes the right thing is staying quiet so others don't get hurt. The anger rose fast, sharp, then stalled against something heavier. Responsibility. The reflex I had trained into myself over years of fixing what other people broke. If staying silent saved 500 jobs and speaking up destroyed them. Which choice was I supposed to live with? He watched the hesitation land. His smile returned. Thinner now. I knew you'd understand. I stepped back. Creating space he hadn't offered. Understanding doesn't mean agreeing. His expression tightened. Be careful. People misunderstand loyalty when it comes with conditions. I reached for the door. He didn't stop me. Take the afternoon, he said behind me. Think it through. Outside his office, my phone buzzed again. Another approval request. Another document queued with my name already in place. I didn't open it. I walked straight back to my desk and pulled up the access logs instead. Knowing the pressure wasn't easing, it was shifting. The report didn't scream fraud. It whispered risk. I caught it in the margin first, A variance note buried under compliance language that looked harmless if you skimmed. I didn't skim. I followed the reference chain. Then the attachments. Then the off-site appendix that wasn't supposed to exist. By the time I reached the environmental addendum, my jaw had locked. A Chicago logistics partner. Storage protocols altered. Monitoring intervals widened. A spill risk reclassified as theoretical. The math didn't lie. If it surfaced, the exposure climbed fast $50 million in liability. Minimum. And that was before regulators or headlines. My phone vibrated on the desk. Once. Then again. Miles didn't wait for me to answer. He appeared beside my chair, hands braced on the backrest, reading over my shoulder as if we were collaborators. You see it, he murmured. Not relief. Confirmation? Good. I swiveled just enough to face him. This can't go out. It already has, he replied, tapping the screen. Quarterly close in 40 minutes. I stood. The chair rolled back, hit the partition. You're hiding an environmental safety violation. He didn't deny it. He straightened, smoothing his cuff. We're containing exposure. You're laundering risk. His gaze hardened. Choose your words carefully. The NDA slid onto my desk again. This time open to the penalty clause. $1 million. Bold, patient. Sign the quarterly report, he said, or I enforce this and destroy you. My chest tightened. The faces he'd named yesterday surfaced uninvited. 500 jobs? Rent payments? Health insurance? I looked at the signature block waiting for me. Pre-filled. Polite. If I signed. I owned the lie and everything that followed. If I refused. The company folded under the weight he'd hidden and took everyone with it. What kind of choice was that? Miles leaned in. Voice low. You've always been practical. I reached for the keyboard, then stopped. My hands hovered. Useless. As the clock ticked down on the screen. Send me the backup files. I said. A flicker crossed his face, surprise, then satisfaction. Smart. I didn't correct him. When he turned away, I opened a new window instead and began copying the addendum. Line by line. Into a private folder I hadn't used in years. The timer hit 30 minutes. Pressure wasn't easing. It was sharpening. Ethan didn't wait for me to speak. He locked his screen, turned his chair, and said, I won't do it again. I didn't ask what it was. I pulled a chair close enough that our knees almost touched. If he asked you to shortcut anything, I said, keeping my voice low, you don't argue. You document. His jaw tightened. He watches the logs. Good. I replied. Then he'll see exactly what we want him to see. We worked after hours, not hiding, not rushing. I showed him how approvals were supposed to move, where the checks lived, why redundancy mattered. No tricks, no clever workarounds, just the boring parts that kept people out of prison. This slows everything down, he muttered, fingers hovering over the keyboard. It slows lies. I said, truth survives fine. He nodded once and followed the steps. When we reached the reporting module, I stopped him. Here, I said, pointing. This field stays optional. He frowned. That's a vulnerability. Controlled. I corrected. Harmless if everyone's honest. And if they're not, I met his eyes. It records intent. Silence settled between us. Heavy but clean. He understood. He always had. An alert pinged. Another request from Miles. Flagged urgent. Ethan didn't look at it. You're not scared, he said. I am. I answered. Just not of him. The clock on the wall clicked past the hour. Somewhere upstairs, someone laughed. The company kept breathing. Unaware it had entered a different phase. If the most dangerous fight is the one no one knows is happening, how long before he realizes he's already inside it? Ethan saved the changes and pushed back from the desk. He'll notice the delay. He'll call. I said, let him. My phone buzzed as if on cue. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the audit trail and watched the first clean entry lock into place, time-stamped and irreversible. Ethan stood, steadier now. What happens when he tries to force it through? I closed the window and shut down my machine. Then we stopped waiting. Outside the server room, footsteps echoed. Voices passed. Miles's voice cut through them. Sharp and close, I smiled without warmth. The war had started, and he still thought he was alone. Ethan watched the progress bar crawl across the screen and didn't blink. Once this goes live, it won't wait for permission. That's the point. I said, sliding my phone face down. If I'm locked out, fired, or buried in legal notices, it still moves. He pulled up the queue. Emails first, then logs, then the access records tied to specific machines and times. My name appeared exactly where it should and nowhere else. His didn't appear at all. Triggers, he asked. Any attempt to overwrite the audit trail? I replied. Any forced approval? Any deletion flagged as emergency? He nodded and typed. The system accepted it without complaint. Footsteps stopped outside the glass. Miles's shadow lingered, then passed. The silence afterward felt deliberate. My inbox refreshed. A legal hold notice. Then another. Then a calendar block from legal. Marked mandatory. Ethan swallowed. He's moving. So are we. The door swung open. Miles didn't bother with pleasantries. His smile was gone. The charm with it? You're slowing my close, he said, eyes flicking to Ethan. That's not your role. Ethan stayed seated. I asked for the backups. Miles continued, gaze fixed on me. I asked nicely. You asked. I answered, keeping my hands visible. For something that doesn't belong to you. His jaw tightened. Careful. The room felt smaller, pressure stacking layer by layer. Legal emails kept arriving, each one sharper than the last. Surveillance badges pinged as security checked in on our floor. Miles leaned closer, voice low. You think documentation saves you? I met his stare. It saves the truth. If the truth was already scheduled to escape without me, what leverage did he have left? Miles straightened, eyes cold. Last chance. I didn't move. Ethan didn't either. The progress bar reached the end and vanished. A green confirmation blinked once and locked. Miles glanced at the screen, then back at me. For the first time. He looked unsure. Tomorrow morning, he said, backing toward the door. Be ready. He left without waiting for an answer. Ethan exhaled slowly, hands finally steady. I closed the terminal and stood. Outside, the building hummed like it always did. Somewhere inside the system, a timer had started. The auditors sat down first, laptops open, pens aligned. No small talk. Miles arrived last and took the seat closest to the door, like he might need it. He didn't wait for introductions. A folder landed in the center of the table and slid toward them, toward me. Before we start, he said, voice even, there's something you should see. One of the auditors opened it. Pages turned. A pause stretched. Someone inhaled sharply. A transaction summary. An account I hadn't touched in years. A deposit marked as consulting income. The date matched the approvals. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Eyes moved to me and stayed there. Miles leaned back, hands folded. I didn't want to believe it either. My pulse steadied. Not relief focus. Scroll, I said. The auditor hesitated, then did. More pages, more entries. Clean, convincing, designed to end a conversation. Miles watched me carefully now, measuring whether I'd crack. This explains the urgency, the irregular approvals, the pressure. If they'd built this much theater around a lie, how confident were they that I'd fold? I smiled. Not wide, not friendly, just enough. May I asked, already standing. I connected my drive and pulled up the logs Ethan and I had sealed. The screen filled with timestamps and access paths. Here's the approval trail, I said. Same transactions, same dates. I zoomed in, different origin. I clicked once more. The IP address resolved to a single location. A private office, Miles's office. Silence returned, heavier than before. I turned to him. Why was your login approving transactions at 2 a.m? Miles. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. That's the system chimed. A notification bloomed across the auditor's screen. Then another, then a third. Automated releases, logs unlocking. emails attaching themselves to threads that could no longer be edited. Miles stood abruptly, chair scraping back. This is a mistake. No one moved. The lead auditor raised a hand, not toward him. Towards security. Please remain seated. I disconnected my drive and stepped back. Heart steady, eyes clear. The table wasn't destroyed. It had simply flipped. Miles didn't get a second meeting. Security arrived while the auditors were still pulling threads. 2 badges. No raised voices. One of them gestured toward the door and waited. Miles looked at me as if I'd gnawed him out of it. Like I always had. I didn't move. Sir? The guard said, firmer now. Miles straightened his jacket. Dignity clinging by a thread? This is premature. The lead auditor didn't look up. It's overdue. The chair legs scraped once. Then footsteps. Then silence where his presence had been. It felt lighter without him. Like a window cracked open in a room that had been sealed too long. They turned to Ethan next. He flinched, then squared his shoulders. Your cooperation matters. One of them said, stay available. He nodded, swallowing hard. When he looked at me, the relief in his eyes was raw and unguarded. I did what you said. He whispered, all of it. I know. I told him. That's why you're still standing. My laptop chimed. A message from legal. Short. Precise. Cleared. No qualifiers. No conditions. The room shifted again. This time toward me. Questions came. Careful and clipped. I answered with documents, timestamps, and nothing else. Each response moved the weight off my shoulders and onto the table where it belonged. As the afternoon wore on, phones buzzed across the floor, clients paused projects, partners requested calls. A name once spoken with certainty now carried hesitation. How quickly does power evaporate once lies are exposed by evening? The office felt unfamiliar, not hostile. Just empty of noise that had pretended to be authority. Ethan packed his bag under supervision and paused beside me. They said I'd be protected. He murmured. They meant it. I replied. I shut down my computer and stood. The path ahead wasn't clear yet, but it was open. And that mattered. Outside the room, another meeting request appeared on my phone, this one from the board. Urgent. Tonight. I didn't decline. The board call lasted 14 minutes. No raised voices. No speeches. Just a sequence of statements. Each one tightening the space between what had happened and what would happen next. A request for clarity, a confirmation, an acknowledgement. When it ended, the chair said, we accept your resignation. Effective immediately. I slid the letter across the table. It was short, clean, already signed. Miles wasn't there. His absence did more work than any apology could have. The interim counsel thanked me for my cooperation and asked if I would be available as an external advisor if needed. I won't be, I said, but I can recommend someone who understands the systems. They nodded. That was enough. I packed my desk with Ethan nearby, supervised but steady. He paused when I handed him a card. No logo, just my name and a number. They reached out. He said quietly, the logistics partner. I know, I replied. Tell them I'll call. He hesitated. You saved me. I showed you where to stand. I said, you did the rest. We walked out together. Different paths. Same door. 2 weeks later. I signed my first engagement letter under my own company. Compliance consulting. No shortcuts. No silence clauses. The client name at the top was familiar. The same partner who had ended Miles's contract without hesitation. They asked why I left instead of fighting to stay. I didn't destroy your company, I said, and felt the words land where they belonged. I stopped being the wall you hid behind. There was no follow-up. Before I shut down for the night, I wrote one line on a clean page and left it there. I didn't refuse to sign. I refused to become an accomplice. Here's the lesson I'm taking with me. Responsibility without authority is a trap. If your name carries the risk, your voice must carry weight. If it doesn't, walk. Thanks for staying with me through this. If any part of it felt familiar, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this about boundaries, choices, and what it costs to keep them, stay with us. I'm glad you're here.